Good evening, everybody. My name is Bonnie, and I'm going to be your host for today. And today I'll be hosting Amit Chaudhery. Um, Amit Chaudhery is a naturalist, he's a conservationist, and also an author. Apart from these, he also wears a corporate hat and dabbles into a lot of written work. Amit has been in the world of environment and nature and conservation for over 2 decades. But originally, he had decided to study history from St. Stephen's and also holds a master's degree in public administration and another degree in journalism from London School of Journalism. So, Amit, all those things of your education, how did that bring you into the world of working with the nature and making that as a priority rather than anything else that's in your area of work and other things?
Entirely and wholly, Bonnie, because I studied nothing, and therefore I assume I learned a fair bit. But jokes apart, to cut to the chase, it's not something to do with education, and education is very very common as you figure. It has to do a lot with what's your warp and weft, what's your grain, something you come into the world with, something that resonates with your core, and that is something which I always have had. And this was assisted by a loner kind of nature from early childhood. So that sort of melded and welded all of this together. And plus encounters with animals. I was fortunate to grow up in an era when nature was more abundant, even in urban areas, even in Delhi,
Right.
very much more abundant. And people were kinder and more cooperative and less, what should I say, callous about nature and about non-humans. So all of these got together and sort of, fostered whatever little I may have been able to do.
So did you grow up with in an environment where you had a lot of pets, or who was that one icon who you looked up to and said, because the person has influenced me, and in your subconscious state or probably even in your conscious state, and said that the person who has influenced me deep enough to take this to the next level? And who was that icon for you?
No one person particularly, Bonnie. It's a slew of people. I mean, you see them, people who are nondescript, if you will. People who cross your path, the attitudes you see, the behaviors you see, the things you see and do, that sort of stuff. Nobody in particular who I'd say is this one individual who was a role model. Allow me just a second because the battery is going to go. It was showing 100%. Give me 2 minutes. Yeah, I'm back.
All right. So we were just we were dabbling into the who was your point of influence, and you said several people. So
You're asking me who influenced me,
yeah.
and my answer was that nobody in particular, Bonnie. But as I said, attitudes were kinder. They were more cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
People blended with nature much more. I'm not saying markedly different, but for example, this whole arrogant attitude of trying to subsume nature, of intolerance towards non-humans was totally entirely absent. So animals and nature were part of your life, much more integrated than
So
today.
how is Delhi now different from the era where you had sort of grown up? Are you talking about the visual difference in Delhi or the attitude of people of Delhi?
I'm talking of both, Bonnie. I'll give you an example where these where Delhi Heart is, for example, in Delhi. I'll give you an example in Gurgaon later. Used to be a wonderful stream. It used to be a wonderful freshwater stream. You could drink off that stream. I've drunk off that stream when I was a kid. And the very fact and the proof point is there's a village called Pilanji village. It's a Gujar village between Sarojini Nagar and that Safdarjung area. It was built on the banks of that stream. That tells you
Sorry, looks like we are having some technical difficulties at Amit's end. Something to do with the power, I guess. Just bear with us. I think we've lost Amit. Guys, I'm trying to reach Amit and see if he can log in or if he's facing some technical issues. Just bear with me, please. Amit, are you back?
Yes, I am. Murphy's Law.
Right, no worries. Let's just
Okay.
continue with our conversations,
So
Amit.
what I was saying is what we dismiss as nalas today in Delhi, which are acknowledged as drains, were even at that point in time very clear streams of water,
Mm-hmm.
which were used for cultivation, used for drinking, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. So natural capital has been destroyed completely because we have coupled nature with economics,
Right,
assuming that this is the path to prosperity or development, what have you. This
right.
decoupling is essential, Bonnie. So, and this coupling has altered attitudes, it's altered landscapes, it's destroyed natural sustainability, aspects. For
Mm-hmm.
example, water channels have been destroyed and lost forever. You
Mm-hmm.
built up on marshes, which were again water recharge zones, even in Gurgaon. Now, when you come in towards a metro station and you hit upon this Sikandarpur village, that where this Emar building stands now was a huge pond. The
Mm-hmm.
British Chronicles and the British Gazettes have it, and until Gurgaon became urbanized, it was a huge pond. Now imagine if they had had the foresight to develop whatever housing they did around the pond rather than just filling it up and paving it. People have put a premium to go to that pond to sort of
Right.
live there. So there's no sense about nature anymore.
So, Amit, of course, we've had a rude awakening through the last 6 months because of COVID. And we come to the next topic that I have in mind, which is how can individuals contribute in preserving the environment and nature? And in this topic, I'd really like you to touch upon being kind to animals, and animals may not just be cats or dogs, but the whole spectrum, and dig a little deeper into it, which will sort of eventually peter into the next topic that we have in mind. So I open the conversation for you to lead people on individuals contribution towards preserving the environment, and what environment as a word truly encapsulates.
Yes, Bonnie, I think each of us has an important role to play. And consider this, I read it somewhere just before coming to the show. It says, no single raindrops considers itself a contributor to the storm, to the
Right.
deluge. So each one of us is important. So I think the most obvious thing is having a sense of equilibrium, a point in time where we know exactly how much is sufficient and how
Mm-hmm.
much more we need to consume. For instance, the way we typically purchase things, whether we require them or not, and the way we flaunt more and more of it. So the consumerism, and whether it's anything, whether it's dressing up or eating or living the lifestyles we do. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's very essential. The other way, at least this is all self-practice things and no one taught these to me, is to be a little more co-optive towards nature, to have more plants in your house, for example. Wherever you live, it could be a balcony, it could be a terrace, it could be a garden patch, and have more of plants, because when you have more plants, you'll have more insects. When you have more insects, you'll have more birds, and they will enrich your life. And this whole thing about pesticides and pest control, all of those things which are harmful chemicals in the subsystem, should be avoided to the extent they can be. For example, versus naphthalene balls, you can use neem leaves. So
Mm-hmm.
those are very old, hackneyed, sort of solutions one always had, which have fallen by the wayside because we want everything instantly, and we want everything in disproportion. And the more you have has unfortunately become a marker
Mm-hmm.
of how successful you are or how well-to-do you are. And that's the problem, keeping up with the Joneses. You know, that's another one. And then natural habitats, Bonnie. For example, this Delhi NCR area, Gurgaon, where we live, the Aravalis are a pristine and a priceless natural heritage, and no one cares about them. It's everybody's common collective natural capital, if that's the language people understand. So I think we need to wake up to these things and preserve and protect what is there, because it can never be replicated. We must remember that you cannot control nature. The Indian approach of life has never been to control nature. It's always been to be a part of nature, to be with nature, which we are all realizing now. And if you see the tremors the Earth has been undergoing for the last few years, one never heard of tsunamis earlier, what tsunamis were. One didn't have the frequency of earthquakes which are there. So it's up to you. You can say it's all poppycock, or you can say, well, there is a pattern to the entire thing. This
Mm-hmm.
entire deforestation, global warming is letting loose forces which have been hidden for so long on the planet, which are now wreaking havoc, from Ebola to this COVID thing, which is now still mutating, etc., etc. So all these things are very important. I think that essential connect back to nature, and we have become denatured in the process,
Mm-hmm.
has to be restored, because no one eats currency notes, Bonnie. We all eat food.
So, how can these individuals contribute? Give an example in your day-to-day life, things that you do that people around at your workplace can emulate, or you've emulated from people around you, so that a layperson who is just sort of trying to contribute does not know where, how, what, and the whole topic seems larger than life at times. Where do people start?
The
And
first thing I think to my mind, Bonnie, is that we
apologies,
must be
Amit.
cognizant of the fact that we are creating suffering, right?
Sure,
And we are
Amit.
creating
There
this
are
whole
questions.
nature deficit. But to answer your question of how individuals can help, I think we all need to be just a little more mindful of what we do and how we do it. I
Mhm.
think simple things like not using too much of chemicals, even you swab your floors, for example, don't use various newfangled chemicals which claim to disinfect the floor entirely. Use more traditional methods that are kinder methods, greener methods, which you can use to clean your environment, your house, for instance. You can have much more plants. You can have vertical gardens on the corner of your balcony. Keep out some water for the birds in summers and beyond. Keep out some grain. Try to recycle kitchen water, kitchen waste. Compost more. Don't use pesticides in your lawn to the extent you need to. Use other ways. Earthworms, for example, die out, and they're so essential. There's just too many things which can benefit if you just alter a few things. And among those few things, obviously, is just a little kindness towards the way we live, a little more sensitivity, a little less callousness. That's all there is. There's nothing dramatic or chattering.
Right. And would you suggest individuals to sort of map themselves to organizations or affiliate themselves to organizations? Are there organizations that are there? Because these are the questions that some people in the audience want to know.
There are plenty of organizations, but absolutely one can join. There were some very fine organizations around, and one can always suss them out. But I'm a big votary of doing what you can in your own small way. Make your own music, no matter how small the audience is. Yes, organizations give you more knowledge, give you more scale, expertise, etc., etc. tap into them as you would tap into, let's say, a resource.
Hmm.
But essentially and fundamentally, I think all of us need to make some basic differences to our lives, some very easy differences, some very easy things to do. I'll give you a small example, Bonnie, a very small example. Just 2 days ago, I have never been mindful of insects and ants at this time of the year, or throughout the year actually. And
Right.
I saw this train of ants which were going from my house until in what I assume is the ant landscape or ant milometer,
Colony, yeah.
a good 10 miles or beyond, and single file. And they all
Wow.
went for some grains which were there for the birds, but not one of them fought over it. Each one got what they did. We know all this. Each one got what they did, and they walked back with it with precision, with discipline, not squabbling, not quarreling. Even if some ants came, didn't get anything, doesn't matter, they went back. So my only point is this sharing thing, this the need versus greed quotient, and we all need to find our need quotient. I think because the
Right.
greed quotient is limitless, it's sightless, and clearly, we are consuming the earth 8 or 9 times more than it can sustain and renew itself, and we're seeing the tremors everywhere. We're seeing
Hmm.
global warming, food production will fall. We've seen social breakdown of all law and order. Everything is a domino effect. It just ties together.
But I am living in a country where, I mean, Germany was not really known for believing in certain sort of karma, but there are these new age belief systems out here, and a lot of people I sort of hobnob with, whether it's at the yoga studio or whether it's at CrossFit, and at times we get together, and especially during COVID, we used to have our virtual meetups. Something very interesting was told by an American guy who was working in the army, and Wiesbaden, the place where I live, is actually the hub of about 10,000 American soldiers who are posted over here in Germany. The interesting thing that we realized and we discussed is most of the time countries where or areas where you have a lot of abuse to the animals are the countries that get hit by natural disasters. And it didn't strike me for a very long time, and then the gentleman pointed out and said, Bonnie, it's your country's system of karma. And I said, I really didn't think of it, but it's true that, come to think of Japan's tsunamis, I think I would attribute it a lot to the killing of the whales at the Tahiti Islands. Ditto for a lot of hurricanes that hit the U.S. states. I mean, Nepal's whatever the slaughter was. So I resonate with it, but I still look at it from a very scientific mindset. I still need to change that scientific mind of mine and say, no, there are things that nature retaliates, and it's a difficult concept to embrace.
No, I understand, but I disagree with you, Bonnie. Allow me to explain why.
Hmm.
You know, we do know there is a sense of balance in the universe. We
Hmm.
do know that is a very elementary thing, right? Take two stray instances. Right from school, we balanced equations in chemistry, in algebra, and beyond.
Right.
Even now, when there's excessive heat, we turn up the AC and vice versa in winters. So
Right.
there's a sense of balance and equilibrium which is required, correct? Now, having said that, we do know that nothing is in isolation. Also
Hmm.
see this. Now, it's all disparate and disjointed at this stage, nuggets, but we can weave them all together. The very fact that we have a system of justice, of good and
Right.
bad, of what is of the courts of law, etc., etc., etc. So, are we saying that nature, forget karma, are we saying nature has no cause and effect? It certainly does. Only thing is, a bell curve of cause and effect may be long winded, but certainly exists and it's very
Hmm.
profound. And obviously, what we see happening in our lifetimes in the last 20 years or perhaps less, the propensity of it, the frequency of it, the intensity of it is much, much more than it was ever in human history.
Right.
Animals were always being killed, but never
Hmm.
on this scale. You never had commercial killing of animals. You never had this excessive profiteering of animals. What we call, and then we hide them behind innocuous notions like wet markets. For God's sake, what's a wet market? We don't talk about that. We say hunt or we say whatever we do. It's actually murder. So we are decimating nature through and through. Now imagine this, a web of life, nature, if and certainly is a sentient entity. What do you think controls your circadian rhythm? It's nature. What do you think controls the way the earth behaves? The seasons come and go. The ecosystems react and respond in a particular way or they don't. So all of this naturally has an underlying intelligence to it, which is not programmed. It reacts and it acts and it heals itself and beyond. So you go on tinkering with it, it'll certainly hit back at you. So
Chaudhary, you're
all
going
I'm
very
saying to
heavy.
you
Go
is,
low.
sorry?
I am trying to. It's a lot of things that you're saying right now is going tangent. Go low. So, so
All I'm saying is it all ties together, Bonnie. This is a science to it.
right.
Everything cannot be reduced to science. And frankly, what was science? Science told you 200 years ago, man can't go to the moon. It
Mm-hmm.
told you 300 years ago, the earth was flat, will fall off the edge. Science and human knowledge is childish notions and ill-digested fact until you learn otherwise. So my only submission is, let's be always in a sense of wonderment and look at curiosity of a child with everything. And let's understand there are some basic fundamentals we may not be aware of at this stage.
So,
You're the first one who will react if I tell you Descartes, when he was skinning dogs alive and pinning them on the wall to say, I think, therefore I am, and the animal is an automaton, feels no pain. He today would, even people who don't care about animals and nature, would say this man is a barbarian, or even worse. So this is human knowledge, right? That was human knowledge at that point in time. He was the frontiers of human knowledge. So
so
let's not reduce everything to science and knowledge. It's all very debatable.
so my question, or rather, the next way that I would like to steer this conversation would be: in this day and age where we have a lot more humans walking on this planet than we can say about the animals, insects, plants, for the city dwellers, especially in a country like India, where people fight for space, people fight for the food, people fight for to breathe. I mean, how can individuals who are struggling, it's like Maslow, I'm talking about the real Maslow's pyramid. How do people at that level, where they are in that stage of existence, still be thinking about nature or animals or coexisting? So have you experienced something that has stirred your soul and said, this is exactly what everybody else can do? Have you encountered anything in this day and age in Delhi from your past experiences that you've had with animals, people, etc.?
The first thing, Bonnie, is there are just too many of us for the earth to carry. And we all know that, right? So while we can be butterflies, we're all flies. That's the first fundamental. So I don't know. I'm the last one to pontificate or qualified to say so, but we need to produce less. We need to consume less. We need to be less greedy. But to your point about people, what I see is typically people are more intolerant of nature and non-humans. By and large, they may be indifferent still. By and large, in a dwindling way, kindness and compassion and sensitivity remain, but those are dwindling virtues. And I'm not exaggerating it to you. Consider the small example. We all live in urbanized areas in this country. I believe even the audience would largely stem from those areas. Look at attitudes. Look at behaviors. The kind of animal crime you see and that animal crime is not just animal crime. It's a whole attitudinal thing. It's a whole behavioral thing. So puppies, for instance, now there are so many instances. You've been part of it. All this, we have seen how puppies are bludgeoned to death, how they are put in sacks and thrown away. I mean, and several much more brutal ways. We've seen how animals are slaughtered and killed every day. We've seen how cattle on the road suddenly, I'm not saying they should be on the road, are suddenly intolerant. How we've seen how monkeys are. We had monkeys in our experience together collectively on the shelter.
Right.
Now, why have suddenly those monkeys and those cattle come where they don't belong? Because you have stolen their pasture land, their grazing lands. At the same time, you've cut down the grooves in the trees. So where will they go to eat and drink? At the same time, this whole moon-faced Indian mentality, which is so loathsome, is this hypocrisy. On the one hand, you worship the cow, you will kill for the cow. On the other hand, you're happy seeing it lying on a road in an accident, or eating garbage, or worse, ingesting plastics. And then you will go and trade everything off. Similarly, with the monkeys. On the one hand, people worship the monkey. On the other, they are so cruel to it, and we all know this. So my only point is, as you are encroaching upon nature by your sheer numbers, and what are we producing? I mean, which child today's day and age is properly in the grasp of nature? Our schools are air conditioned, they are shut, so are the buses. People think water comes from a tap. No kid has ever seen a glacier. No kid has ever gone to the forest, ever heard the forest noises. So the more and more we become denatured, we become insensate. And the more and more we become insensitive and insensate and callous, we become cruel. It begins with animals because animals cannot speak for themselves, they have no vote, they have no voice, they can't protest, they can't do anything. And then it goes on to people. We see attitudes of this everywhere. So attitudes have gone drastically south, if you will,
Sure,
in my
Amit.
estimate and experience.
These are some of the truths that probably you know, I know, and a lot of people who may be logged in also are aware of it. But what could be some of the ways that people can really contribute? Let's say when you see monkeys with human beings who are tied and are dragged around, the snake charmers with snakes, which I have encountered. Um, Quite recently in my last trip in last October. And of course, I was empowered to do something about it. But what is it that you would give as an advice to people who are logged in and are not aware about the laws? And the difference between domestic and wild animals from from the Indian laws perspective, what can be kept, what can't be kept, how are they kept, why they should not be kept, difference between fostering and really keeping. So these are some of the broader topics that would be interesting to hear from you.
Certainly, Bonnie. I think my only submission is everything has to be an attitudinal change. So the attitudinal change in this case is rhyme with nature more. Get up to see a sunrise and a sunset or whatever. That's the first thing. So attune and plug in again. Is a way the battery died and I have to plug it in again. So plug in again, recharge yourself and get back to your intrinsic core. That's the first thing, because attitudinal change is most important. And then take ownership. We don't exist in a vacuum in a flat or a building or a society. We exist in a larger ecosystem. So what goes outside your door or outside your gate is equally important, in the sense that, from littering to wastage of water overflowing to whatever. To your point about animals, see, Bonnie, my estimation, people have always told this to me, that this is a dangerous animal. But honest to God, I cross my heart, the only animal who's dangerous is human beings. No animal has ever harmed me. And remember the hyenas?
Yeah, we remember having a
Remember the hyena we got and we put her back in the forest,
yeah.
in the Raisana forest? You remember how she turned back and then she went into the forest? She didn't. We were so close to her.
So, Amit,
And she was a wild
I
animal.
agree
Remember
with
the
you.
vulture?
I
Remember
agree.
the owls, the snakes? So many of them. And again, to your point, back to the basics. You cannot own a wild animal, so you cannot keep a wild animal as a pet. That's the first thing. There are laws which are very stringent about it, right from the Wildlife Protection Act to various other laws which come into play, and it's a mishmash of various things. That's the first thing. So any wild animal you see in your surroundings is out of its natural habitat and deprived of its natural behavior. So that's the first crime which you must be cognizant of and you must report it. There are the Forest and
Where
Wildlife
would people
departments.
report it, Amit?
There is Wildlife SOS, for example, Bonnie. And I'll give you a small example. Now it's the rainy season in India. You will find a lot of snakes coming out, monitor lizards, etc. They're totally harmless, barring 3 or 4 varieties of snakes: king cobras, kraits, vipers. The snakes are pretty harmless. Most are grass snakes or water snakes or rat snakes or whatever they are. So if you're so scared, the best thing is to call NGOs like Wildlife SOS. They work 24 hours. They can rescue the animal. Don't kill it, for God's sake, because you're just tampering once again furthermore into the ecosystem, into this entire web of life, into this entire chain of life.
Right.
I'll give you a small example. Many years ago, Surat had a big plague because they killed all the stray dogs. The stray dogs actually were useful because they kept the rats in check. They don't eat the rats, but they kill them typically. Snakes is the same thing and beyond. So everything has a purpose to be here. Nothing, no matter how small, is insignificant. If you remember Dr. Seuss' book, Howard Hears a Hue,
Yeah.
I mean, the speck of dust and the people living in it. So everything is significant. Nothing is without a reason. And people like monitor lizards are not harmful at all. They're totally harmless. So my
Yeah.
only point is, I'm not saying go pet an animal who's wild or otherwise. All I'm saying is be aware, be mindful, approach things, approach situations from a moment of understanding and knowledge. So
So
if you see a wild animal,
this brings
report
me
it.
to this brings me
Sorry.
to another very sensitive topic, which is very close to my heart. Is across Delhi LCR, I mean across India, I've seen people still catching langurs and keeping them captive. And langurs are supposed to be living in troops. They die of heartbreak because they are very social creatures. Langurs are used to sort of drive away the rhesus monkeys. What can individual people at individual capacity do beyond just looking at it, feeling lousy, wanting to sort of complain? What is the next process that people can? And this is something that just came into my mind because we're talking on individual capacity where people can contribute. And what would be your thoughts around those? How can people help?
Bunny, we rescued langurs together, you remember, years
I did,
ago.
but I would want you to talk about it for
So
the audience.
certainly, yes, yes. Allow me to tell you this: that first of all, these langurs are picked up typically as infants from their
Mm-hmm.
mothers. Mothers are very often killed, so they're actually kidnapped from the mothers. Organized gangs doing this across the country. They are shipped surreptitiously through various modes to various parts of the country. And so the entire thing is entirely illegal. Having a langur anywhere is illegal. There's a government orders on that. So
Hmm.
anybody hiring a langur, so to say, can be and must be prosecuted. Now, having said that, the langur cannot go back to the wild for two obvious reasons. One, it's been totally humanized. It
Hmm.
eats off people's hands. It does not know what to do in the natural habitat. Two, very often the teeth have been filed away. The incisors, particularly, the molars are left. The incisive teeth, those are all filed away. They're all
Mm-hmm.
broken or filed away. The same they do with snakes. So the best thing is to call a specialist wildlife agency. Wildlife SOS comes to mind. They do wonderful stuff. There are forest departments. There
Mm-hmm.
are individuals who are respected, who do reasonable amount of work, who are kosher, and rescue the animal and help prosecute the person. All you have to do is report it, document it, and report it. That's all.
At the
Nothing
police
more than
station?
that. Sorry.
Can the reporting be done at the police station and across the country?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you can. You must.
Hmm.
Any wild animal in captivity, or any wild animal being sold or traded or
Yeah.
used for meat, it's a crime.
Okay. So there's a question by Rana Athea of DogSpot, and unfortunately, it's for me, Amit. So allow me to answer. He's asked me a question: what do I do, or what are my learnings in the marine life side? And I think he's asking about it because I work a lot with uh, rescuing, not even rescuing, but I fight for the rights of sharks. And in my view, just as much as human beings across the planet are speaking up for the voices of the sorry animals on the land, um, killing fish for the human consumption is a larger crime, and especially large fish because they are the ones who propagate and given the good gene pool. And as far as sharks are concerned, they are like vultures or crows on land. They are the scavengers, and they have the highest amount of mercury in their system. So anyway, human beings who consume shark are killing their own liver. I mean, slowly but surely, you know. And in my view, if we as human beings just temper down a wee bit on marine life and consumption of fish or poultry just for a while and let earthlings beyond humans also learn to survive and get back their numbers, it's going to help. So yes, if I were to answer your question, I my learnings from marine life as Rana, they work in a similar way as land mammals work. They live in tribes and troops and schools, and they also emote. So it's not just animals or human beings or birds that emote. um, the shark that I'd rescued in Florida recognized me for 3 days that I was visiting it, if that answers your question. So let's go back to our conversation, Amit, which is more on the lines of uh, creating focus groups, the pros and cons. So you have, amongst other things that you have worked on, also created a group called Earth Quotient. Can you tell a little about Earth Quotient? What does it do? How does it function? Who are the people who are playing various roles in it, etc., etc.?
Uh, Bonnie, it came to my mind there are quite a few NGOs. There are a lot of NGOs, in fact, some very, very fine ones who are doing wonderful work. Earth Quotient came from a different tangent. The tangent was that Earth Quotient is an aggregator of effort. It is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a virtual, viral, collective network of individuals who wish to live a more mindful, a more useful, let's say, or less harmful way of life, and perhaps do more, come and protect and reclaim what their natural heritage is, which is priceless and unreplicable. So,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is the government cutting through forests to build some railway tracks or highways,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is managing, if you will, these environment assessment reports, etc., or whether it is something as obvious, which we don't even know about, most people don't know about, is camel meat. Earth Quotient bandies people together, and those people are from all walks of life. They all have a second life. The main life is earning a livelihood, as we all do, including yourself. This is something which sort of meshes in a second parallel life, and they all come together. I'll give you a small example. We just scored a minor victory with Telangana High Court
Mm-hmm.
because camels are transported illegally, despite all the laws being in place, despite everything else being in place. There are a multitude of laws from Rajasthan all the way to Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and
Mm-hmm.
slaughtered, despite everything being in place. So the laws in this country are pretty robust. Implementation is negligible or never. And the primary reason for that is,
Would you say
let's not
it's
blame
the
the police.
would you say it's
It's the
the matter
people's
of
attitude. See. Sorry?
would you rather not say that it's the awareness which is not there
It's
rather
not just
than
awareness, Bonnie. Everything boils down to attitude, in my understanding. I see, I may not be aware of the law, but if I see a wild animal being exploited, a
hmm,
langur, for instance, we talked about it earlier, or
right.
if I see a camel being forced to carry more than it should, or maybe in a different habitat, in South India, for instance, or in East India, for instance,
Hmm,
the least I can do is I know from basics this is not its natural habitat. This is no business being here. And common sense tells us as this country's eating habits change, and they have changed for the worse, these exotic meats, if you will, nilgai. Remember the cases of nilgai we
yeah,
had?
yeah.
Nilgai meat, like bush meat, camel meat is becoming exotic and becoming much favored. And people have mistaken beliefs that sacrificing camels is going to be a big part ticket to heaven. So all these
Hmm,
issues have to be dealt with. So yes, knowledge is important, but the fulcrum of the entire thing, the nucleus point, has to be attitude.
hmm,
We all look, but we don't see. We hear, but we don't listen. So the important is things to be mindful, to just to see how things are, apply your mind and thought, and then the least you can do is trigger some sort of action towards it.
hmm,
Nothing stops one from doing that. It's just the level of a commitment. That's all there is. Because I just tell you, a camel to die, it takes a good part of an hour, right from hamstringing it to cutting its sinews and tendons to stabbing through the heart. It takes a long time.
hmm,
It doesn't die easily. The Telangana High Court, fortunately, in a petition, has just passed a favorable verdict. It's an interim verdict, but we hope to score. So we will score. This is what Earth Quotient does. It
hmm,
comes together for a cause. Everybody converges onto something, adds what their skills and knowledge may be, and then brings it to bear fruit to the extent it can.
right.
Effort is something we can do, which anyone can do. It doesn't take much money. It just takes effort, skill, and that's it. But
Hmm.
that's what's strangely wanting.
Right. Thanks, Amit. I think I would rather sum it up that all of us need to have a certain amount of accountability in every walk of life that we see or encounter injustice to environment or animals. Talk a little about the impact that Earth Quotient has had on environmental issues as well.
Uh, what we've been able to do is minor victories so far, Bonnie, and I must confess that we have not been very organized or very sustained. There's so many balls you're juggling at all times. But having said that, yeah, a few I'll bring to bear. Uh, there was this habitat in Fatehabad near Hisar district in Haryana,
The nuclear
which
power
was
plant.
pristine country, and you're aware of it. You visited the
Yes.
place also. And it just took one gentleman who's a simple school teacher. We're talking
Mm.
about knowledge, we're talking about various things, and talking about attitudes. Now, he had no knowledge about wildlife laws. He just knew that these are wild animals, black buck at the apex, and various other things in between, from jackal to
Peacock.
nilgai to porcupines or whatever you will.
Yeah.
And he got together with us. We were up against the government of India. We were up against the Nuclear Power Corporation of India, the NPCIL. You can imagine the clout and the gravitas and the money they had. This is a simple school teacher earning a few thousand rupees a month.
Mm.
And we were able to score a victory today. That place is back to being a nature hub. It's
Right.
teeming with wildlife.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So would you
And it
just
was
say
once they
then
were
it's
building a housing colony and a nuclear power plant in that area.
right? So
So various things which you apply, exercise your mind to happen. Again, in the Aravallis, right here between Delhi and Gurgaon, if you go take that hilly route, you'll see the fencing being done, which was earlier wire fencing. Probably you haven't seen it, but those who live in this area may have. And that's now being walled because the fence was utterly ineffective. They were dumping bio waste, garbage, construction waste into the Ravelis. So we got that fencing done, coming together.
So, Amit, would I then just sum it up at times that for any and all issues or causes that individuals take up, no matter what, where they are at this point in time in their life and what their income group is or line of influences, if people are persistent enough and they know that the fight that they are doing is larger than themselves, there are organizations that will step in to help them fight for the similar cause that they also believe in, and that individuals are not really alone if they want to bring about the change.
Yes, Bonnie, I tend to agree with you, but my only submission is what Mahatma Gandhi said. I'm not a fan of his, but regardless, he said, find the purpose, the means will follow. He
Mm.
says that. It all begins small, yeah. Just a little more awareness about what's around you. Don't be an automaton. Life can be this, that, and the other, but it should also be sustainable. It should
Mm.
also be healthy, also be clean. And if you look at those vectors, they'll guide you rightly. That's all there is.
Right. Uh, my last question, I think, before we definitely wrap up, is at this point in time, Earth Quotient is dealing with various areas that could seem a little ambiguous. But if you would sketch out individuals who may want to contribute through Earth Quotient or have causes to take forward, how would they want? May they be able to go about with it?
Well, Bonnie, let me just tell you quickly three pointers. One, Earth Quotient is not an NGO. Earth
Right,
Quotient is a common platform. It's a collective. It's
the
a it's a
consortium.
virtual viral platform, right? Now, having said that, what does it do and how does it work? You come to the table. You have an issue. You come to the table. You see what you will contribute. It's
Right.
not just money. It's not money. For
Yeah.
instance, this Telangana petition I drafted, I'm not a lawyer. And we
Mm.
found a wonderful lawyer to file the case, argue it in court, pro bono. So
Mm.
the whole point is, so you come on board, you say, okay, this is what it is. This is the research I've done. This is what the thing on the ground is. This is how it's a consistent, clear, repetitive kind of situation. And this is documentary third party evidence which can stand to scrutiny. And the third and final is, and let's see how you can make the music along with us. And we all contribute with whatever competencies we may have.
Mm.
And it's just scaled up. That's what it does. There's
Right.
no office, there's only a website, there are only people. We come together globally and we go away globally. That's all there is.
Right. What would be those three takeaways you'll give the audience for today, Amit? I mean, on the lines of being sensitive, especially through this COVID thing and the learnings that you have had as an individual through this COVID phase, respecting the environment in our own way, and then the last point is going forward here on with the new normal, if there's a new
Well,
normal.
Bonnie, COVID is only an alarm signal. It's a sprinkler which goes off when somebody is smoking. So COVID is the symptom, it's not the disease. The disease is yet to manifest and come. And it shall, I promise you this, the way we are going. So the answer to your question is, my suggestion is that the only thing I keep on harping about repeatedly is attitudes and behaviors. If we just learn to observe a little bit more, be a little more cooperative and tolerant, open our minds and our eyes, we will come away with a better attitude. A better attitude will ensure that we have a better behavior towards things and a more sense of ownership. And then we get to go with it. That's the first thing we need to do. The second thing is, let's see what friendlier choices we can make in our lives. Let's decouple nature from economics. The two can coexist and they must coexist. But nature cannot just be abrogated to economics and vice versa. I think that's very essential. And finally, hold people to accountability, hold institutions to accountability, and not just in terms of a rant or a tweet or something. That also helps. But the important thing is to take cognizance of it. It's your own house, it's your own backyard, it's your own larger system.
Right.
Why are we limiting ourselves to the walls of our houses? The world is our home. We taught that for civilizational centuries. So everything is together. So let's take more awareness, let's take more ownership. It's collective futures that we hold together.
All
And
right,
there are
Amit.
people who help you out with this.
If the audience has any questions, you can draft in your questions. We'll wait for another minute and a half. And if not, Amit, it was absolutely wonderful hearing from you and the wonderful work that Earth Quotient has started. It's a very different platform, of course. I have yet to hear of something which is as similar as Earth Quotient as of now. Maybe the closest I could think of is Citus, but not even Citus, because Citus does have an office.
Thank you,
So,
buddy.
so I'm still trying
Likewise.
to draw parallels, but I'm failing to draw parallels with Earth Quotient as of now with other organizations who step in. But to make it simpler for the audience, what Earth Quotient does is it's a consortium. It's a group of people who think alike for the causes that they believe in. Come forward, and if others within that group can help you, they will help you. If not, at least people in Earth Quotient, the consortium of people, will be able to guide you to the right channels so that you can still run with the cause and you're not alone. Am I right, Amit?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So with that note, Amit, I say thank you to you and the audience and to DogSpot for having hosted all of us, and have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.